Hello and welcome to PGurus Prime Time. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Namaskar. And we have with us back after a couple of weeks of hiatus, Karthik Gopinath. Karthik, Namaskaram and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskaram, sir. It's so good to be back and catch up. I'm sure there are a lot of things that we need to discuss and primarily focus on Tamil Nadu today and
Yes.
for obvious reasons.
Absolutely, and you are sorely missed. I can tell you, there were so many requests, especially last Thursday, because I did not tell them until very end that you will not be able to make it. They were saying, "Oh, we really wanted to listen to Karthik's inputs," but like you said, Tamil Nadu, a lot of things are happening. Let's start with how the cabinet reshuffle has inducted so many ministers from the southern region. I think there are a few from Karnataka, there are a few from Tamil Nadu. The notable one being Dr. L. Murugan, who is now a Minister of State at the center. Why don't you take it away? Let's take a look at that, and then the big news about who is now the new president of Tamil Nadu BJP.
So after a long time, there is some cherish-worthy news in Tamil Nadu political circles, something that the nationalists can be happy about and look forward to, which is of course the appointment of Mr. Annamalai, former IPS officer, as the state chief or the TN president of BJP. So this was on expected lines, although there were some other opinions that Mr. Nagarajan must be, Mr. MLA Karnagarajan must be appointed as the, our MLA, I forgot his name. What is his name?
Not Gandhi, right? The other one.
Not Gandhi. The other person, I'm so caught up. Anyways, so the other person, Nainar Nagendran ji, should be appointed as the president for the kind of experience that he has and his witty handling of the Dravidian politics. He should be given the option. In fact, I had conducted a poll on my YouTube channel, but everybody was vouching for the one and only Annamalai IPS officer. So thanks to the people of Pallapatti for not voting to him, and which has made him such a big success. The national command has recognized his importance and they've given a chance. So for this, I think you should thank the BJP central command, which, in generally south of Vindhyas, their concentration is not as much, I should say. Also, despite being heavily focused on the UP elections and then the Punjab elections, they have made the right decision and they've taken a very bold step of appointing a person who's very young in the party, young in age. And despite oppositions from within the party, there were a number of candidates. There were people like Vanadi Srinivasananji and, of course, Mr. Nainar Nagendran and a few other senior party members. But it was very obvious that Annamalai would be the choice because they need to change. They need to completely revamp the entire setup. Until that is done, there is no way that BJP will have considerable hold in Tamil Nadu. So this choice by them is actually celebrated across Tamil Nadu, and I hope to speak to Mr. Annamalai very soon and congratulate him in person. Meanwhile, one also needs to understand that the challenges that he might be facing are huge. So he needs the right team with him to guide him through the entire process, because there are people within the party who will be envious of this posting. They've been around making circles of the Kamalayam for a long time and are visibly upset about the appointment. Although they do not show it outside, there are going to be a number of teams trying to scuttle his progress. So he needs the right team with him, and he needs to take up the cause of the temples. He needs to take up the cause of the temples, because a youth taking up the cause of the temples and a non-Brahmin talking about the caste equations, a non-Brahmin taking up the cause of the temples can make it a mass movement, and that is what we've been demanding. Plus, having a clean image in terms of his performance as a bureaucrat helps him a great deal in order to revamp the entire administrative structure that the party has. So there needs to be organizational rejig, and there needs to be weeding out. So he needs to throw away all those people who've created a ruckus thus far, who have been hand in glove with the Dravidian parties. So all that needs to be done on a war footing. And thankfully, the first step is in the right direction. And talking about Mr. L. Murugan, he's been given MOS in two ministries, which is information and broadcasting, the other one being animal husbandry, fisheries, and the other ministry. So the irony here is a number of people here were against the Cinematography Amendment Act. So they said this is against the right to freedom of expression. and a few actors had the audacity to call the central government as union government, which is with a political motive. If DMK does that, you can understand it. But Surya's brother Karthi goes meets the chief minister of state, comes out and says Wondriya Arasu, which means union government, which is a fad they are trying to promote in order to promote secessionism. So these people, again, they know who's the boss now. There is a minister of state from Tamil Nadu appointed by BJP in the information and broadcasting ministry. I think they'll learn the lessons very soon. But with Annamalai, the hopes are really high. I hope he delivers and lives up to the promises.
Just to add to what you just said, Karthik, I think Annamalai should identify Anmiga RSL is equal to Annamalai. This is very important because you saw the kind of reception when Rajini announced his entry into politics. He said that he will be conducting Anmiga RSL. I'll explain that. That means theism-based politics. That's what he meant.
Spiritual politics.
Yeah. Spiritual politics, that's what he meant, and that is something that needs to come in the front and center. I have with me a book that sort of tells you the greatness of this land. It's the land of Vedas, and this book explains why it is called so. It's a beautiful book by Padma Bhushan awardee Dr. R. Nagaswamy, and also Annamalai being a career IAS or IPS officer, he'll have to try to cultivate a little bit of the cinematic delivery that is a must in Tamil Nadu politics. They are so tightly twined with movies that everything for them is like a theater, and they start putting one-liners. I mean, I can suggest some. I'm always good for giving unasked for advice. Like they used to have this one-liner called "Kadamai Kandiyam Kattupadu," which means you can translate that for me. But I was going to do something like this for Annamalai. Nermai Nanayam Nallachi. Again, these are all these are all a must. You have to do some of these things, because otherwise what happens is they don't take you seriously. Unfortunately, there are people who do get taken in by these one-liners. I mean, take a look at Rajnikant's movie, right? Andavan Solran, Arunachalam Nadataran. So he can appropriate that and change Arunachalam to Annamalai, and that will. It's important to use this effectively. Don't make fun of it, but make use of it effectively. And we wish you all the best, Annamalai sir, and let's hope that this is a big turning point in the politics of Tamil Nadu. It's sorely needed. I don't differentiate between DMK and ADMK. Both are opportunists. One is only a little bit more spiritual than the other, but essentially they have been found wanting whenever it came to taking a stand, and I hope that is going to change for good now. So let's go into this other controversy, Jai Hind, or not saying Jai Hind in the governor's address. I believe that is where it was. The governor's address was usually prepared by the government, and he just reads it out, and looks like he did not mention the word Jai Hind at the end, and this has now stirred a controversy because why don't you explain to us what happened there?
So, having talked about a heartening episode in Tamil Nadu politics, one of the most frustrating scheme of things that is being prepared by the Dravidian politicians here, is pandering with the emotion of Jai Hind. They're trying to meddle with an emotion which has helped us survive the imperial rule. Jai Hind is more than an emotion. It was a war cry. It is not just a slogan. It is closely associated with each and every Indian who has a patriotic spirit, or basically, to simply put it, each and every Indian with a right mind. Having said that, the entire issue started with the governor's address, where the conventional practice of mentioning Jai Hind at the end of the speech was neglected. So whether it was done by design or not was something people couldn't get initially. But now it is confirmed that it is done by design. I'll tell you how. So one of the MLAs in the floor of the house gets up and says that Tamil Nadu feels emancipated for having not mentioned Jai Hind. So this is the mindset of a non-DMK MLA, very much in the alliance. This is what he said. There was not one MLA in the entire house who had, reprimanded this, or probably jumped into the well of the house, created a ruckus, and asked the governor to take it off from the proceedings. None of them did it. In fact, Congress was a tad bit earlier to respond in the positive way. They said, we oppose this, we love Jai Hind. And only then did Tamil Nadu BJP respond for this. Now, in the same scheme of things, what happens is another minister, Mr. Ponmudi, Minister for Higher Education, in an interview to another Tamil channel says, times have changed. Stalin doesn't like Jai Hind, so we dropped it. So now you get it. It is all by design. So they didn't want to touch it by themselves. They asked one of their alliance partners to rake up the issue, and they test the waters. And now they want to take it further. They say it is something. It is not a Tamil word. So the obvious question put forth to them is Stalin a Tamil word? Is Karunanidhi a Tamil word? Is Udaynidhi a Tamil word? So are you always conversing in Tamil? What is this hatred for Jai Hind? Have you suggested an alternative for Jai Hind, something like Varga Bharatham? So if you had suggested something of that sort and neglected Jai Hind, understandable. So this is not a language issue, this is an emotive issue, and this is pure secessionist tendencies done by them. So having said that, just like you, I want to show a book. This book is about the person who coined the term Jai Hind. So Jai Hind Senbagaraman Pillayin Veera Varalaru, which means the history of Jai Hind Chempagaraman Pillai. So it will be news for a lot of viewers outside Tamil Nadu, even within Tamil Nadu, that the term Jai Hind was coined by a Tamil. It was coined by somebody called Chempagaraman Pillai. And this book is written by one of his grandsons. He does not have an offspring, so his sister's grandson had penned this book. His name is Mr. Sethu Seshan. I had the opportunity of meeting this gentleman, wonderful gentleman, thorough gentleman, who does not put on airs, and despite all the work that he has done. So I'll tell you in brief the kind of contribution this person had done, Mr. Chempagaraman Pillai. So he had dialogues with Hitler. When Hitler said that India was not capable of ruling itself, he had written strong editorial pages in the popular newspapers of that time in Berlin, condemning such statements by Hitler, and asked and gave a deadline that you have to apologize to me within this time frame. And believe me, Hitler apologized for this. And then he was slow poisoned by the Nazis. He was a part of the provincial government in exile, and he was the foreign minister. So jokingly, Mr. Sethu Seshan tells me that he was the first person to work from home, because the provincial government in exile was in Kabul and he was working from Berlin. And he traveled in SMS Emden, which was the name of the ship that came to Bay of Bengal, and they bombarded the Madras presidency back then. So one of the bombs is still surviving. One of the bombs is present inside St. George's Fort. So when Mr. Karunanidhi had erected a statue, so there is a big story behind it, I'll break it some other day. When Karunanidhi had erected a statue for Chempagaraman Pillai, there was another demand. Why do you want to name the fort as St. George's Fort? Since there is a bomb dropped by some person who loved India, who worked for India, died for the country, you should read his history. It's amazing. You could never find such revolutionaries elsewhere. So when you have a bomb dropped in this name, why don't you change the name to Chempagaraman Pillai? That demand was not paid heed to because it does not fit well with the Dravidian ideology. So what I'm trying to put forth is Jai Hind is a national war cry. It is a national emotion, and it was coined by a Tamil leader. So this is being deliberately sidelined by the Dravidian parties here. It is an act of sedition, and I'm hoping that this is an opportunity for every like-minded nationalist to go on and say Jai Hind every time such secessionist tendencies are being put forth by the Dravidian parties. And I recommend you to read this book.
Absolutely, I'll be happy to. And these are all very important moments in history as to what really transpired. Someday I will also explain to you what happened with my grandfather. He used to be in the British Navy. We'll talk about that later because we're already 13 minutes into this program. The next topic is the NEET politics. For some reason, DMK wants to somehow keep NEET in the front burner, somehow saying that we are talking to the center. There is nothing to talk. The Supreme Court has said that NEET is the only way you can get into medical seats. I mean, if you are running a medical college, you have to honor NEET admissions. And I believe the reason here is more money and the fact that politicians are running many of these medical colleges. I could be wrong. Your thoughts, Karthik?
No, you're perfectly on the point, on the money, sir, here. See, there is nothing neat about NEET politics that is happening in Tamil Nadu. So there is utter disregard for the Supreme Court verdict, which says that there needs to be a common entrance exam for entry into medical services. Basically, because you need to ensure quality across the nation, and so they come up with it's a seven judge bench judgment. It's not a one single bench judgment. It was a seven judge bench judgment. It was gone into the judiciary had gone into this very thoroughly and given the judgment. So if DMK is unaware of this, they had appointed a judicial commission headed by an ex-judge. At least he should have given the proper advice to the government, saying that whatever you're doing is contempt of court. So what happened in Tamil Nadu is a BJP leader by the name Mr. Karan Nagarajan had filed a writ petition in the High Court saying that what DMK is attempting to do is simply a diversionary tactic. It is fooling the public and it is against the will of the Supreme Court. And High Court admitted it rightly and asked a very valid question, a very pertinent question to the learned counsel of the DMK. What they asked is, why have you formed a committee when the Supreme Court has clearly said that NEET is compulsory for admission into medical exams? So this question they have not answered. They have filed a counter stating a number of reasons. One of the main objectives they say is that we are just trying to study the NEET. We have not said that we will cancel the NEET, but we are trying to study the NEET. We are trying to study the impact of the NEET. This has already been done and dusted. I don't know why they are doing it. So it's simply to divert the public. So let me tell you, Sree, there is 7.5% reservation already in place for government school students. So the complaint that is raised by most of these diversionary people is that village students and government school students will not be able to perform better. So there is already 7.5% reservation in place, and 405 students have already qualified. 54.66 is the national average for NEET clearance. We are way above the national average. We have top 10. We have people from Tamil Nadu in top 10 ranks. And if you're talking about social justice, you can take the breakup and look at it. Not general category, but all the backward caste Muslims, MBC, SC and SCA, which is the divisions in Tamil Nadu with 69% reservation. All these people have benefited when compared to pre-NEET era. So before NEET, there were roughly 207 people who got in from government schools into this medical colleges. But right now, the reservation itself gives them roughly 277 seats. So there is nothing to cry about this. All you have to do is provide proper coaching. And for your notice, there are 90% of the questions last time that appeared in the NEET exams were from Tamil Nadu State Board. I don't know if it was by design, but that is how comfortable things have been put here. And now they try to bring in sentiments like the death of this girl named Anita, which is anyways pathetic, and we are all sorry about it. But you can't bring in sentiments. Okay. Now, if some politician's wife commits suicide, saying that I did not get a good birthday gift, do you think that person will be prosecuted? This happened in Tamil Nadu. Similarly, somebody commits suicide that I didn't get into IAS. Are you going to cancel the exam? Is this the way you're going to coach our students? So basically, what they are doing here is trying to politicize the issue. And as you rightly mentioned, if NEET was not there, the amount of money that goes into this, admissions is huge. For every seat is 1 crore upwards. There's nothing below 1 crore. So incompetent people get to use the high-class facilities provided by the colleges. Now, these medical college owners are in tantrums because they do not understand how important, they do not get to, make money out of this. So they understand how important this exam is, but they want to play a diversionary tactics. And I'm very sure that very soon people will get to understand the importance of it. The worst part is many actors here try to support it. For example, Mr. Surya goes on to support this, but he should tell which aspects are bothering them. He doesn't come out with those things. He just goes out and gives a political statement, which is very similar to DMK. Same is the case with Cinematography Amendment Bill, which has provisions to deal with piracy. The entire Tamil industry has been crying about piracy for a long time. They say there are certain sites which put our movies, which put our entire professional setup in problem. But now when the central government comes up with a bill to deal with that, they want to entirely scrap the bill. They don't want to modify it. They don't want to give their suggestions, but they want to entirely scrap the bill. So that is the state of affairs in Tamil Nadu vis-a-vis NEET politics as well as cinematography bill. But the point here is, you can understand that any guy who understands the basics of judiciary will not support this kind of a movement by them. Any day this is going to take place, NEET exam will take place. So your electoral promises, your manifesto promises are going to go down the gutter. It is not going to work out. People will realize now they want to show that it is because of the BJP that this chance was spoiled. So that is the attempt that DMK is taking right now.
Also, I might add that if somebody gets through the NEET entrance exam, the fees for them is only 12 lakhs as opposed to 1 crore. So very, very big difference in somebody's life when they are trying to enter into the education, into the medical colleges. And I also am really pained that the sons of Palanichami Gounder, who has acted in such fantastic movies like Kandan Karunai and Rajarada Soran, are coming down to this gutter level politics. I say gutter level because, come on Surya, come on, you are better than this. I've seen some of your movies, that's a fantastic works. Don't get into something that you have no experience in. You are better person than what you are making out to be now. Right now, it is very, very pathetic the way they are trying to do this thing. That's all I can say. Let's move on to the next topic, which is the temple issue, because you can be sure that the same characters will move there also, right? Go ahead.
So starting with that, the kind of turncoats that DMK are, I think they should go for a national level competition. So initially they said that the moment we get in power, the first signature will be cancellation of NEET, which didn't happen. Now it's a long drawn out legal battle with already a foregone conclusion. And now they move into the temple issues. So the kind of promises made by the HRNC minister was that any encroachment, we will try to regularize it. We will try to regularize the rent under section 78 of HRNC Act 1959. But if you take the section 78 of HRNC Act, you will know that there is no such provision existing at all. Similarly, both the Dravidian parties have tried to accommodate their failures in social welfare schemes by taking the temple property. Recently, there was a judgment in December 2020 by the Kerala High Court, which reverted the transaction where the Guruvayur Devasam Board had given 5 plus 5, 10 crores to the state government, saying that it is not within your powers to take the money from the temple, which is meant only for the temples. So he went out on a public interview saying that we will try to give patta to people who've been encroachers here. That is not at all possible. And the drama that they created saying that, listen, we've recovered all the temple land, it is just to hide an important historic landmark judgment by the High Court, by Justice Mahadevan, where he had given a number of points, important 75 points as to what the HRNC should do and what should be done with the property and how you should use the temple property only for the benefit of the temple. It cannot be used for public welfare. Public welfare policy does not come into it. You cannot take temple lands or properties. I'm saying this because there's another guy, honorable gentleman named Mr. Rangaraj Narasimhan, who is again, he's doing a phenomenal work in terms of temple activism. Another person named Mr. T.R. Ramesh, I'm sure you and I both know him. So what has happened is in Srirangam temple, there were number of donors who donated cows to the temple. This particular joint commissioner had taken those cows and given it off to another welfare scheme within the HRNC, saying that these are excess cows. Now tell me, how can cows be excess? On what criteria are you making them excess? Similarly, what they are trying to do is, they say under 34A of the Act, we will try to sell those lands which can be used by, which are not useful for the temples. So in all the sales, which includes the Tirupur Collectorate, you should make note of this particular issue. Tirupur Collectorate was taken away from the temple land. In fact, there was a water body within the land, and the recent High Court judgment says even if it is Taj Mahal and there is a water body there, we will bring it down. So there is a stream of things that need to be followed out, which is not followed in any case. So if you take the HRNC, there are thousands of issues there. For example, the metro station in Purasivakam was taken from one temple land, and the no objection was asked for from the public after the sale deed has been given. After the money has been transferred, roughly 40 crores was transferred by the metro to the executive officer, and only then the no objection was taken. So if you look into the sale of land, if you look into the alienation of property under 34 and 34A, everything that is done so far has been ultra vires to the Act. So it is going to be a tough time for the HRNC minister, provided there is large scale activism. And that is why I constantly say that youth should take up this issue, and it should not become a class issue but a mass issue. And I hope very soon people will understand the importance and power of Tamil Nadu temples.
Absolutely, I hope so too. Now let's take a quick look at power cuts. Before we go there, viewers, we are taking questions for Karthik. Do send in your questions, and we are about I would say about 40% into our program. We still have a few more states to cover, but more importantly, this thing about power cuts. There was zero power cut as long as ADMK was in power, and then now you have almost what 50%. Are you having power now?
I am not having power now. That is the point. So you can see me perspiring. So basically, I have this to help me out every time I come on live, because you never know when the power is on, when the power is off. I think the power just came. So I told you it is very difficult out here. All they need is a small rainfall, or probably a squirrel wandering about, and the media here blatantly supports such claims. We do understand that can be sporadic incidences of animals getting onto the power lines and disrupting the services. But to justify it in order to say that it is because of some animal and some rodent, it is not because of the malfunctioning of this ministry, is a farce. So I'll tell you what's happening here. The power cut here is pretty bad. In fact, the minister promised that there will be no more power cuts, which is actually not happening. So he's not living up to his expectations. So what has happened is there was repair and replacement contracts, which was signed for 2019, 2020 and 2021. The budget allocation for 2021 was the lowest. I don't know for what reason. So the ADMK had planned this by design. So 5,000 crores were allocated for this. So since it is the lowest allocation, you need to create a need for further allocation. So Mr. Sendil Balaji, who is the power minister, goes and meets the finance minister and asks for, I don't know, extra funds to do whatever he's doing. But the claim that he says that no maintenance has been done for the last 9 months is completely far from the truth, because these equipments are really old. If you don't maintain them for for an interval of every 45 days, they are not going to survive. These are not new instruments. These are really old ones. So having said that, we checked into the maintenance work done by the Chennai Corporation so far. So the Chennai part of it, they have been done a number of times. It is not the 9 months no maintenance has been done. It has been done. A number of load shedding activities have been done for maintenance purpose. So this is a regular thing that has been done here. So the power cut is not due to lack of maintenance as they claims. They primarily want to take in more funds and take more contracts, and meanwhile do whatever they do best in order to in order to do whatever they do. But the thing is, after the integration of the grid with the national grid, there is no shortage of power. We have been a power surplus state, and despite this, for flimsy reasons, the power ministry is behaving in a way which is very shocking, to say the least. This cannot go on forever. I think they are negotiating some deals in their favor, and that is the only logical reason for this. They can't say that private players are ADMK had done corruption with private players. They started the private players work. In fact, it was in the DMK regime that the private players were brought in it. And Jindal and Adani are the renewable sources suppliers, the two big suppliers, and you can do without them as well after the integration. So you have the central pool giving you enough power. So the problem is something to do with the mismanagement and the frequent transfer of all the officers within the power ministries. For what reason, no one knows. So he needs to get his game together, pull up his socks. Otherwise, there is going to be a mutiny just because of the power ministry alone.
Have they provided data like the amount of electricity that is consumed over, say, 2019, 2020, 2021? And then Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll tell you something. See, the power demand for 2020 and 2021 have been the same, because in peak summer, it is usual because of the operation of ACs, the power demand goes up. But last May as well as this May, we did not have functioning industries. So the power demand has not gone up. The power demand has been the same. But despite the demand being the same, in fact, I would say that the demand has gone down because most of the small scale industries, the second lockdown, the third lockdown was very stringent, and hence the number of industries that were operating were very minimal. So it was basically the domestic demand. And despite that, all this is happening. It's the worst thing. And they have not given any white paper. And in fact, in all my videos, I have constantly requested him to provide, okay, tell us who did the mistake, where is the mistake, who ordered for these maintenance works not to be done. Was it the offices, was it the bureaucracy, or was it the politicians? Please give it to us in open. Nothing of that sort has been given thus far.
And both of us are engineers and we can understand engineering, and we'll be very happy if the data is factual, and we will compliment the government if they do come up with the facts and state them, because now you are on the national grid. If you are having one coal thermal generating plant having a problem, the national grid will immediately take up that shortfall by providing it, sourcing it from adjacent states. I mean, you have many power surplus states all over India, and it is possible to transfer the excess power that some other state may have to you. So this is no longer going to hold water. Two engineers, we are not going to listen to squirrel story. It's more like a cock and bull story. That's not going to hold water. As a matter of fact, the squirrel is a small enough animal that it might even assuming that the head is on one wire and the tail is hitting the next wire, adjacent wire, the wires are spaced enough apart that it would be very difficult. I mean, if the squirrel is hanging on one wire, it is not going to get electrocuted. Nothing is going to happen. Look at the number of crows on the electric lines. So these are all fundamentals.
I think the squirrels are on steroids. I think they've beefed up because of steroids and become super powerful. Otherwise, I see no reasons why they are becoming a problem here. And they are quoting reports from the United States of America saying that there have been sporadic incidents of power shutdown because of the squirrels. I don't know, sir. Maybe I didn't study engineering quite well.
No, there's a real reason for this, and I think I have a couple of theories, but let's wait and see if the government comes out with a white paper explaining where the shortfall is, which generation plant is having a problem with generating electricity, and so on and so forth. What happened when they connected to the national grid? I think these are all good questions that need to be asked, and I don't think that there is something beyond this. But let's see. Next thing is you have the release of 7 or not release, the request for release of 7 people who were in jail for the murder of Rajiv Gandhi. This is one of those things that either ADMK or DMK, they keep on bringing this thing. Look, what about all the families of the police officers who gave their lives trying to protect the life of Rajiv Gandhi? In fact, I can tell you another thing. If Rajiv Gandhi had not waved off the security and allowed that lady Danu to come to garland him, this would not have happened. There was a 15-foot barrier. So this was a huge mistake on part of Rajiv Gandhi, because he was feeling that he needed to get closer to the masses. One small, error, and now, it's so whatever they did. This was an ex-prime minister, and it is a huge deal if these people keep on asking. This is pandering to the lowest common denominator. Don't do this thing. That's all I can say. Your thoughts?
So as I told you, again, there is attempts to become a turncoat here. They want to blame and pass the buck on to the central government, saying that the president is sitting on the request of pardon for quite a long time. So one of the ministers comes out and says there are a lot of legal entanglements in this particular case, and Stalin is not going to be bogged down by it. And that's pretty much they've said. There's no more elaboration on the same, and in fact none of the media persons have questioned them when will the release happen. So they do understand that it is not their it doesn't fall under their jurisdiction anymore. It is completely in the hands of the governor and the president, and there is no big legal entanglement here. The president, if he wishes to give it, he will give it. But having said that, there has been representation from the other side, which is the family of the other affected people. It's not just the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi. It is also the murder of a number of other people who have been there. In fact, Anushya, who works for the police, still has pellets left in her body. So one of the politicians' mother still cannot be fed solid food just because her intestine has been damaged because of the incidents. So the stories of all these people also need to be taken into account. And moreover, as you rightly mentioned, even if he does not belong to the right wing, Rajiv Gandhi was a former Prime Minister of India. And you release any person who was even vaguely associated with such an incident, what kind of a symbolic statement are you making is the question here. So I don't think that is happening anytime sooner. And maybe during the elections, next elections, BJP might or might not take a call on that. But I think it should not be done, and it would not be done.
Now let's take a look at the Kerala politics. The first thing is about the truth about the number of corona cases in Kerala. This is one of those, again, this massive media fake narrative exercise that they said as if Kerala was the model state as far as tackling corona is concerned. I don't think that's all true. We had doubted this even before when, what's her name, Shailaja, I think. She was Shailaja, she was the prime power minister, and they were saying that, oh, these guys, we have done a fantastic job. All that is essentially fudging numbers, and that's what it appears to be. What is the latest on this, Karthik?
So, so I'd say that KK Shailaja, or Teacher Shailaja as she's fondly called, was better in handling the corona situation. Right now, the count of the cases is around 14,300 with roughly 148 deaths. So for a state of this size, this is kind of huge when you compare it to the numbers in Uttar Pradesh. And I'm sure you're aware that Uttar Pradesh is doing a great job in the containment. And of course, the media here doesn't try to report it. There have been 30 lakh cases, 1 lakh active cases here. And now the vaccination drive has been segmented. They want to vaccinate the 18 to 23-year-old group, which is the youth, which forms the backbone of the communism ideology there, and the private base employees and migrant employees. So they've basically tried to divide the entire geographical area into 3 spaces, that is A, B and C, C being the highest total positivity rate, where areas with more than 15% positivity rate is present. So in these places, there is only 50% relaxation given, whereas the other places have been opened up. And the districts that are hugely affected is Malappuram and then Kollam, followed by Ernakulam. So all these places are affected. And the caseload in Kerala goes on to show something. With the population which is very small when compared to the other states, there is large-scale mismanagement. Otherwise, there cannot be a spur in cases. In fact, even the first when the first wave happened, the highest cases were reported there. A lot of underreporting happened, and they did show some strong tactics in trying to fudge the numbers, as you rightly pointed out. But it is out for people to see that their management in terms of corona is not as good as a progressive, so-called progressive state needs to have it.
And the next topic is ISRO scientist Nambi Narayanan, and there have been some recent developments on that case, as well as there is a movie that is being made by Madhavan, where he has written it, he's acted it, he's directed it, I think he may have even produced it on Nambi Narayanan. What's the latest on Dr. Nambi Narayanan?
The name of the movie, by the way, is Rocketry: The Nambi Effect. So, for viewers who are not aware of this personality named Nambi Narayanan, you should probably Google it and know more about him. So, this is a true nationalist, a person who dedicated his life for the cause of the nation, wanted India to be on the forefront of cutting-edge technology, be it space or be it cryogenic engine technology, for which he was known. So it so happens that this guy goes to, I'm not sure if it is Princeton, but I'm guessing it is Princeton.
It is Princeton.
Yeah, so I'm guessing it is Princeton University. Does a wonderful job, finishes his thesis within 10 months in record time. And obviously the talent is recognized there and he's offered a job, but then he says, I want to get back here, and works along with people like Abdul Kalam and the leading scientists of his Vikram Sarabhai as well, who realized his potential, and from solid propellants he suggests moving into liquid propellants. And seeing the efficiency of his work, he was made the in charge of procuring the idea of this
cryogenic fuel. Yeah.
Yes. So procuring this idea of cryogenic engine. So basically it was technology transfer from the Russia, and the Bill Gates administration back then tried to put as many barricades for that as possible. So he tried to develop that for the country. And it so happens that some of the officers of the Kerala police without any grounds whatsoever, tried to imprison this person, and he was put behind the bars, treated like a third-rate criminal. And this erstwhile DGP, Mr. CB Matthews, he was the person behind this. So now he goes and files an anticipatory bail, basically because after 1994, this incident happens in 1994, where two Maldivian nationals by the name Mariam Rashida and Fausia Hassan, these ladies were supposedly having contacts with ISRO scientists, and this person, CB Matthews, felt that it was because of Nambi Narayanan and a few of his fellow scientists were arrested. But it turns out that they had no connection. This particular person had no connection whatsoever. Then the Supreme Court validated his stand. The Supreme Court reinstated his right to reputation. And until this day, 1.9 crores has been paid in compensation. So if the state is coming and paying 1.9 crores, imagine the amount of damages it must have cost. So they treated him like a third-rate criminal. In fact, they bet him. They made him stand an entire day. They forced him to confess that he was behind this espionage, but he didn't do it. And under the concept of vicarious liability, the state was made to pay by the Supreme Court, which means that it is your officer who did it. So I don't care how you collect the money from him, but I want you to pay it. And the Kerala government had to, oblige. And now a DK Jain committee was formed for this purpose. You should understand, this guy CB Matthews goes to the court, files an anticipatory bail, says that, see, listen, I was forced by the Intelligence Bureau. One person by the name of Sree Kumar, he forced me. And there was evidence to show that Nambi Narayan was involved in this case. Look at the audacity of this person. He is the erstwhile DGP of a state, goes on to say such blatant lies about a person of this repute. Where he's been vindicated by the Supreme Court, and despite that they are doing this. And it was Mr. Karunagaran who had to resign because of this. And Karunagaran was partly not to blame for this, because he felt that I'm not going to do it. He didn't want to do it, but the Congress High Command pressurized him to do it. So a lot of issues have to come out. 18 people have, CBI has filed FIR against 18 people, in which this particular person has applied for anticipatory bail. We really want to know who was behind this and who wanted to delay the progress of India in terms of space technology, because in commercial space technology, if we are able to launch satellites of bigger payloads, it is going to help the coffers earn more money, more US dollars. So somebody was behind this. So we need to get to the bottom of this, and we need to make this person a national icon, because he lost his life just for the national cause.
And as a matter of fact, Congress has always played politics, and in this saga also. It was during the period of Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao, who was the Prime Minister of the country at that point. His son, Prabhakar Rao's name also got dragged through this case. They tried to link the two, because they wanted to, who wanted to, smear Narasimha Rao's name also. Anyway, so most important thing, guys, remember, I don't know how many of you remember this, but this whole case got revived after an article appeared in PGurus 3-4 years ago.
Oh, you did. 2018 we had the judgment.
Yeah, so
I'm guessing it's 2017.
we were in fact we were the first one to publish it, and then only others picked it up when they saw the gravity of the situation. So again, PGurus has been the tip of the spear in many of these things. Unfortunately, the amount of success we expected in sending some of the crooks to jail hasn't still happened. In fact, NDTV was a boilerplate template for how media was laundering money for politicians, because the same template has been applied over and over again and again, especially in Tamil Nadu. So I hope someday, maybe Dr. L. Murugan, he has to take this up and on a war footing and see how many of these channels are being funded how. Anyway, let's move on to the next thing. There was a few years ago unruly behavior in the Kerala's assembly session, and this had some repercussions. And I think, if I'm not wrong, it's the High Court or the Supreme Court that has come down heavily on Kerala.
Okay, so the entire thing is, the Kerala government tries to defend its education minister, current education minister, Mr. V. Sivankutty, who was charged under section 447 and 427 of IPC, along with section 3(1) of PDP Act, that is destruction of public property. So what happened is, this essentially happened during the Congress rule. Now he's in power. The communists are in the power. So what this person did was he uprooted the chairs, broke the mic, created vandalism there, created a ruckus in the legislative assembly. Now this current government goes to the Supreme Court, applies special leave petition under what Article 132, if I'm able to recollect correctly, and says that the case needs to be withdrawn. We need to shield this person because there is no grounds for imposing this. The Secretary of Legislative Assembly had filed the case. But whatever happens within the floor of the House, it is the prerogative of the Speaker to make such decisions. So no permission was sought from the Speaker. So it doesn't fall under Section 321 of CRPC. So these are the legal terms they use. But what the Supreme Court has clearly said is you cannot protect any person who is trying to destroy the public property. And this was given by Honorable Justice Chandra Choud and Mr. M.R. Shah, Honorable Justice M.R. Shah, who said you can't try to protect these people. Why are you trying to protect these people who are breaking the public property? Such unruly behaviors of lawmakers must be reined. These are the lines that were given. Also, there has to be a modicum of decorum in legislative bodies. What's the larger public interest in defending an MLA who created a ruckus when a finance bill was being tabled? So the point is a finance bill was being tabled and he tried to do all this drama, and the Supreme Court has clearly passed on a message not just to the Kerala Assembly MLAs but to the entire nation, because it comes from the Supreme Court, that you can't have unruly behavior. And I think probably this could also be passed on to Rahul Gandhi, who tore the legislation in the floor of the House. What are you trying to do? Such things should be avoided. And any opinion that needs to be put forth needs to be put forth with, preserving the decorum of the place. Because it's at the end of the day, it's a public property. And if you don't respect it, there's no point in having you there.
And we are running a little behind, so we're going to catch up now. Let's go to Puducherry, and there is an imminent appointment of a Lieutenant General for Puducherry, that is the equivalent of the governor. What are your thoughts? Who do you think is the leading candidate for that job?
Well, I have no clues, but from what is circulating in the bureaucratic circles and what I've heard from the media persons, it could be the erstwhile DGP of Tamil Nadu, Sree Tripathi. The name is making rounds, of course, but it's not for me to decide or me to give out any secrets. It's what I'm hearing. So this person, Mr. Tripathi, is a man loved by the police fraternity. He's a very gentle person, a very quick decision maker, able decision maker from the state of Bihar. But he wants to settle down in Tamil Nadu. But I see no difference between settling down in Tamil Nadu and having a stint in Puducherry. So since he's loved by his comrades, since he's had a nationalistic perspective, and in terms of Puducherry, the central government always wanted some kind of a policing, and that's why they put in Kiran Bedi. So I am hoping that it could be Mr. Tripathi ji. But it's too early to say. Let's hope it is Mr. Tripathi ji, and it will be a good choice.
And overall, how are things in the state of, in the Union Territory of Puducherry? How are things going?
Things are a bit lull. It's a bit slow, I would say. For example, there is a proposal to rebuild the Legislative Assembly, which was actually started in the Congress regime. But now they are planning something of the scale of 320 crores for the new legislative building. Also, there is 100 crore industrial town being planned, so that the biggest problem with Pondicherry is, apart from tourism industry, there is no industry there. There's no big industry. Considering its size, it's understandable, but they want to reduce this out migration, stress induced out migration from the state, and they want to provide employment opportunity, and they envision providing employment to roughly 1 lakh people. Also, there is a request, since there was only an interim budget that is passed, there's a request for 9,250 crores so that new proposals could be brought in, and the entire budget can be presented. I'm hoping the legislative building's foundation stone will be laid by Shri Amit Shah ji, who is here who's visiting Puducherry in August. So these are the things that are happening there. And as usual, Mr. Narayanan Swamy had started a drama. He cycled all the way protesting for price hike in fuel rates. So he did that protest. Apart from that, things are pretty slow, I'd say, because despite 50 days of election victory, The ministers have been sworn in, but the portfolio has not been allocated. And recently, the MLAs went and met Modi ji even before Tamil Nadu MLAs met him. So things are taking a slow turn, but I'm sure slow and steady wins the race. So they'll take their time and do it slowly.
Also, tomorrow we are going to have a very interesting session on PGurus with Professor R. Vaidyanathan, where we are going to take a look at are states even necessary, because he is going to lay out a very convincing argument as to what the state can do and cannot do. The number of things that the states can do now has reduced considerably after the GST has been passed, and therefore, just to disperse salaries and pensions, you don't need this kind of an omnibus cabinet, waste of time, waste of security expenses and all that stuff. So it's a very interesting debate hangout that we are going to have tomorrow. Do tune in. Now let's take a quick look at Telangana. I had the opportunity of listening to a scheduled caste officer by the name of Akunuri Murali. And Mr. Murali, IAS, has resigned his job, and he brought a very, very interesting picture of how Mr. K. Chandrasekhar Rao, also called as KCR, the current chief minister, how he is running Telangana politics. He says that things are so centralized that he will not even like even a collector to do the day-to-day jobs that is routine as part of the collector's job. Even those things he is expecting that the high command will tell what to do, what not to do, and even if that person exceeds his work by even 10%, he shunted out. So this kind of stuff is very, very sad, because Telangana has been backward for a long time. This is the reason why the partition took place. I mean, that was the main reason. They said that the erstwhile Andhra Pradesh wasn't allocating enough funds for the development of Telangana, which was the main reason for having the state separate. So, but be that as it may, the other thing that Mr. Murali said was very, very sad. Was he said that KCR has realized that in many of his assembly segments, the margin of defeat or victory is only 3%. And the state has about 18% SC/ST population. What he's trying to do now, he's trying to actively woo that segment in the hope that they will vote for him. And he explained an incident where there was a death of an SC woman, and the ex gratia grant was way above what you normally do. And then the daughters of that lady, they had filed a case in the police station about suspected murder of their mother, and the police took hard-handed methods to try and force these children, both daughters, to withdraw that complaint, because they wanted to make it look like KCR comes in, he gets involved, 35 lakhs given, everything is hunky-dory, he is the savior of all the SC/STs. So this plot has gone wrong somewhere. A lot of interesting things are coming out. We've been saying this for a while now. The way the states are being run, chief minister seems to hold all the power, other ministers don't seem to have a lot of power, and this is becoming reinforced when you see the operationing the way in which KCR is functioning. You can take this thing, search and copy, replace everywhere. It appears to be the same thing. I mean, so then why do you need a council of ministers? You can directly, one chief minister can direct all the collectors to do their jobs. So there are some things going on. Karthik, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think Stalin is all encompassing in Tamil Nadu also, or is there some room for the ministers to do their own stuff?
Oh, no. That is not happening. I wouldn't call him an authoritarian at all, because he has no clue what's going on. The agenda is set by somebody else, I don't know who. And in fact, recently it so happened that he did a cycling expedition from Muttukadu to Mahabalipuram. And then we discovered that cycle was not a normal cycle, it was an e-cycle. It had a motor fitted. And I was wondering how he was pedaling with ease, and it was 20-kilometer ride. And for his age, he's able to do good. So in fact, I was commending his work with the cycle. But nothing of that sort happened. So it's an e-cycle fitted with a motor. Why am I saying this? Is because this is the kind of work being done. All that is being done is PR stunt. So the agenda is being set by somebody else and things are being carried out. But one thing to be noted in Tamil Nadu politics is there is proper consolidation of power in terms of DMK. So all they want to do is portray Stalin as the ultimate leader, keep him in the forefront, and of course work your deals behind that. But keep him in the forefront. There is no fight for the top leadership as yet. So he is being portrayed as the unquestionable leader here. But in the case of KCR, he has his own fears, and that is why there have been a number of desertions. People have gone and joined BJP, which of course you still can't figure out if it is a good strategy for BJP. But in terms of Tamil Nadu, there is no problem with the consolidation of power in terms of DMK. The opposition has been meek until today, but after the appointment of Annamalai ji, we are hoping for a lot of action here because ADMK doesn't want to take any risks because it has the Damocles sword hanging over it. There are so many corruption allegations, they can trigger anything and bring in a investigation for that. So they are really meek as of now. So that is my 2 cents on current authoritarian status of Tamil Nadu. I don't think it's authoritarian, but there is large scale consolidation of power in this case.
Is there anything else you want to add from Telangana? Then we can call it a wrap.
I think we can call it a wrap because it is
Okay.
already 9:55,
Wonderful.
so that we could take a few questions.
Yeah, there are a few questions, so we'll just address those. Chaitanya YSK wants to know, what is the BJP government doing to push for India to have planned cities, as BJP has a reputation since Vajpayee that it is good at infrastructure?
So the infrastructure push has taken the backseat after this COVID pandemic, which has been the case all over, I guess. So ever since the pandemic outbreak has taken place, even the very important parliament building construction was was stalled for a while. Of course, then the High Court condemned the petitioner who tried to put a petition saying that this building should not be built, and the Supreme Court confirmed it. So such things are happening, but right now for the safety of the laborers involved as well, such projects are going slow. But if you see the average amount of roadways created by NHAI during this particular regime and the Congress regime, it is higher. If you see the number of railway lines laid down, this is definitely higher. But I think the smart city project could have been way better, provided there is cooperation from the states. Right now you have the Singara Chennai 2.0 being planned by Mr. Stalin because that was his pet project during his first stint as mayor. So all those things are happening here. But in terms of infrastructure push, there is intention from the government, but the contingencies are such that they are not able to give it a large scale push as yet.
And the next question is from Vignesh Sivakumar. Do you think the West Bengal TMC government should be dismissed on Article 356 because of post-poll violence? Why is the post-poll violence not shown in Tamil Nadu media?
You would be surprised if it is being shown in Tamil Nadu media because, Didi and Dada function together. So the media is controlled by Dada here and things do not happen the way we want it to happen, or at least neutral reporting doesn't happen. But in terms of Article 356, I'm forced to believe that the central government has taken a very, very cautious step. Too cautious to the liking of many nationalists, I would say. Because ever since Modi had come to power, the imposition of precedent rule has not occurred anywhere else. Of course, J&K, it was there. But then apart from that, anywhere else it has not occurred. Even in Maharashtra or in West Bengal, it has not occurred thus far. But this is a perfect case for Article 356 to be implied. In fact, there has been questions raised by the judiciary as to whether Article 356 should be invoked or not. So that kind of a question coming from judiciary goes on to say that this is a fit case. But I am not sure as to why Mr. Modi ji is contemplating this action, why he is not taking it seriously. Maybe because of the political implications it can have. Because already the international media and many such made-up reports say that he is gagging the press. Despite all the freedom that they have to bash him left, right and center, there are reports saying that he is gagging the press and he is equated with Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un. So these kind of attempts are already made. So he is a bit cautious when it comes to the his image in the international media. One. Second is the number of elections are coming. The nearby state of Uttar Pradesh is facing elections. He doesn't want a precedent rule by there so that people think this could happen here as well. So such opinions are keeping him from implementation of Article 356. But I am sure that if things continue this way, and Mamta tries to do something or the other just to create a rift between the center and states. It is just a matter of time before 356 is imposed. And in fact, she's been given a fine of rupees 5 lakhs. I'm thinking that's a very small amount for the kind of work she's done so far. It should be 50 lakhs and upwards.
Next question, again from Vignesh Sivkumar. Do you think this generation of youngsters in Tamil Nadu are losing their nationalistic feeling and identity because of Dravidian politics?
Certainly, Shivkumar. See, how will you inculcate the spirit of nationalism? It should be either in your tender years, in school days, or there should be some kind of a familial environment where you get this from the family, or you should be in the armed forces. In such cases, it is very natural. But the environment that a child grows in Tamil Nadu is this fake Dravidian politics. And today we have Mr. Dintikal Leone being appointed as the head of the textbook corporation of Tamil Nadu. The basic idea, the basic work of theirs is to print the textbooks. And the very immediate press conference, he says that I am going to stress upon the word Ondriyarasu, which is again we have talked about the secessionist connotations this word has, not against the word, but the way it is being used. So he comes on to say all this. So the books hails Dravidian ideology. The movies here, once upon a time you had people like Arjun, people like Vijaykanth who made nationalistic movies. Such movies are not happening these days. The political circles who set the rhetoric, who occupy the online spaces, all of them are anti-national in Tamil Nadu. So when such things are there, it is very difficult for the youth to be nationalistic. And that is precisely why we are all super elated about a nationalist party having a youthful person as their head who can take the message to the public, and the public will, and the younger, the demographic dividend that we have, the youth will buy his words, unlike the older generation which had no use whatsoever, I would feel.
And last question for the day. Pradeep wants to know, what should be Annamalai's first 3 steps as president as per you?
Interesting questions. So the first thing is to take up the temple cause. And second thing is to break off all the Dravidian fake propaganda that they have created thus far. And third important thing is create a statewide plan, a long-term vision and a short-term vision. And keep ticking the boxes once the short-term goals are being achieved, and publicize it. Have a good media team, have a good backing of youngsters with him, and create ground movements. For example, take the case of Maharashtra. If the RSS makes a march, at least 20,000 people walk the streets. They do the service, and it is recognized by the public. The RSS is active here, but the scale and the grandeur is not projected the right way. So
we seem to have lost Karthik. Hopefully we will, he's going to try and rejoin. This is the last question anyway. Let's see how it goes. I'm just going to wait for a few seconds. The line is still active. Oh well, I think that was the last question we had. Thank you very much for joining, Karthik. I'm sorry we lost you, but we'll hopefully make it up next time. There are a few more unanswered questions. We'll be sure to include them in our next hangout. Thank you for joining. Namaskar.